That's great. Thank you very much. And I want to pay tribute, as head of TUSLA, you were extremely accessible and fantastic. So I wish you well on your appointment in this role and hope that continues in the same vein. I suppose we've had, the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party have met with the parents group, parents seeking reform of CAMHS. And they are a group that are growing in numbers on a daily basis, and they're a quite substantial group. And I just want to, they gave us a submission, and that submission has come into this committee as well. But they would say, so they've done a survey of all of their members, and we're talking about substantial numbers. We're not talking about 30 people, we're talking a very substantial number of children and families. And they'll say, why the HSE denies that there is any discrimination against autistic children, we strongly believe, based on our experience, that the exclusionary clause in respect of autistic children is often being used against them to not offer supports or a differential diagnosis, that rather than diagnosis an anxiety disorder and acknowledging self-harm or suicidal ideation as part of a mental health issue, everything is linked back to autism so that they don't have to offer supports. Some of our members mentioned support being withdrawn once a diagnosis of autism was disclosed, and others raised concerns that turning away autistic children is being used as a way of reducing waiting lists and refusing referrals. Many members said that CAMHS explained away anxiety, depression as being just part of ASD rather than acknowledging and offering support for the mental health issues being experienced. We spoke with these mothers. There were mothers that came into us. One of them happened to be a social worker herself. So they aren't isolated cases. We can talk about the person that, the woman that gave evidence in the last section of this and say that's an isolated case of over-medication or the offer of medication. But in these, this isn't. This is a pattern of behaviour on due diagnosis. And I suppose my question is, why is that happening? How on earth is it acceptable? And how is it not being picked up and dealt with? So that would be my questions.
Yeah, look, we recognise that there have been deficits in the services to autism across the board, and it shouldn't be up to parents and families to determine what's the appropriate service. That's our job. But what has happened, unfortunately, is that autism-specific supports that which we would recommend would be provided within primary care or within the disability network teams to support the thing. Then, if somebody was accessing those, then if they had a moderate to severe mental health difficulty, then they had to move over to CAMHS, and there was kind of a ferrying over and back, and no, it's not yours, it's fine. So what we've done, maybe if I tell you what we're going to do about it, explain, we have an autism protocol now that has been piloted in 2 areas, but has now been rolled out to 4, and we hope will be mainstreamed early next year. And essentially what that says is that young people would access their autism supports within either primary care or within the community disability network teams, but that their CAMHS supports would be provided in conjunction with these. So you don't attend one service or the other, you can attend both, and you can attend both simultaneously. So you take away that you could be transferred from one to the other. And ideally that the CAMHS supports would be in-reached into the community disability network teams, so that you stay with the team that you're comfortable with and the CAMHS consults into them. Now, pieces of work could happen within the CAMHS service, but there is absolutely no exclusion criteria for people with autism from CAMHS, right? The CAMHS operational guidance is very clear that if you've got a moderate to severe mental illness, if you've got autistic spectrum disorder, then you belong to CAMHS. So that you can attend both services. But as I said, the pilot, there's been good learning from it, and that we hope to mainstream it next year, and hopefully that these problems will get ironed out.
Okay, so I suppose that leads to 2 follow-on questions for me. The first is with regard to recruitment. So obviously there's a recruitment freeze going on in the HSE, that the disability services are exempt from that. But our CAMHS services exempt from that, so we need the confirmation, is that the case or not? And And then the second area would be that the parents, I've sat with people, and we have obviously a huge shortage and under-resourcing of the community disability network teams. So, I mean, but I have sat with some members of those teams over the last couple of years and found an almost a view of parents that they amplify, exaggerate, dramatise. You know, a lack of advocacy for your child is based on reality of experience rather than, you know, I've heard comments with regard to parents of they are, you know, oh, they expect their child to be fixed, to be, and I have to say I'm personally appalled that anybody, I think parents need to be treated with tenderness and kindness and respect, but that there seems to be a kind of almost a dismissal of parents in this. So I'm concerned that maybe that is a pervasive attitude as well.
Okay. So if I take that in reverse order, I wouldn't disagree, and I think I'd be misleading you if I said anything other than there's a very variable culture across our health and social care services, and that's rooted in a historical paternalistic culture that we're the professionals and we know what's best for you and we tell you, and that's about the size of it, that's all you're getting. Thankfully, we also have a very modern day workforce now that doesn't subscribe to that view, so I do think there's a sea change on that. I would never uphold a position where we become judgmental of people because they're unhappy with the service we give them. Even if we can't provide or we don't believe it's appropriate to provide what they believe they want, that doesn't mean they should be treated as if they're troublesome.
So is there a complaints mechanism?
There is, of course, yes, absolutely.
It's
and
effective.
sometimes that doesn't work because when people have that fundamental distrust with us, they don't trust the complaints process either. I've met many families who feel that. But, you know, at times professionals might be frustrated with the position that a parent might keep advocating or keep making. But, you know, I made this point recently in an interview. I'm paid to be frustrated. Parents aren't. Parents are anxious about their children and they will go to the end of the world to find a way to address that anxiety. And I think our job is even when we're saying no, is to be compassionate and kind in that. So that's just on the culture piece of it. On the recruitment piece, you're quite right, disability is exempted from the recruitment pause in most grades other than management administration, and that's because disability is now also a separate vote and because the shortfall below their funded target is so significant. In CAMS, unfortunately, they're not exempted from the pause for the few weeks that are left in the year, except for consultant doctors and for graduate mental health nurses. Both of those are free to be recruited. The one thing I can say to you on the positive side of that is even if we're full going into next year, you'll have heard me comment very publicly about those matters. We do have 2,200 and something additional new posts for the health service next year, and I'm really delighted that that's not all acute centric. And just short of 70 posts in that are specifically to CAMS. And they'll be protected and they'll be recruited and they'll be filled. But there is no doubt the health service is able to recruit better than it did before, which is good. We're losing less than we did before, which is good. But there comes a point then when you're full and your workforce is full for what you're funded to do. And I've made the distinction many times. That's what we're funded to do. It's not what we're saying we need. We would always look for more and advocate for more. But we do have to demonstrate some level of control in spending what we have. So CAMS will be recruiting again in January. And I think just to give you a reflection of the CAMS service in terms of its recruitment volume and its staffing volume, I've worked in the health service for a very long time. I remember when the first CAMS consultant was appointed in Limerick, where I was based. It was one consultant for 3 counties and he had a secretary. There are now 6 consultant-led CAMS multidisciplinary teams in that area. Do you know, so it's quite expansive from where it was. But that's not to say we don't need to do more. Of course we do. Of course we do. But I would want the message to absolutely go out from your committee in response to parents you're talking about. I will not lead a health service that treats people as if they're a problem because they're advocating for their children.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the directness of your